Hi, this is Sharon Acoff-Sledge. I want to talk about understanding historical research studies. And it's a qualitative approach to exploring the past, according to our textbook. So, what is a historical research study? It's a form of qualitative research that where you would collect and evaluate data to understand the past. So it's going to interpret events, institutions, cultures, things like that over time, and it seeks to look at the impact of historical phenomena. For example, I just want to give a practical example so you can understand why you would do a historical research study. Um, we hear that Huntsville City Schools is under a consent decree that dates back to the 60s, I believe. You would have to research that to understand why the Justice Department still has oversight over Huntsville City Schools. As long as they've been in existence, they should have come out from under that. So they're trying to reach unitary status. But if you don't do a little historical research, you won't understand. So there was a young man, Sonny Herford, who happens to still be alive, and his father just passed away recently. All of his siblings are still alive. I got a chance to meet him. I got a chance to meet his father, but they raised a lawsuit to filed a lawsuit to fight discrimination in Huntsville City Schools against people because of their race. And so now we have things in place like magnet schools, majority to minority transfer. These things are vestiges of that lawsuit from the 60s. But to grasp a better understanding, you would have to research what was going on then. When should it be used? You should use it for the example that I said, and when you want to explore the origins or an evolution of an educational theory, policy, or practice. So, if you want to know why they have MTM or majority to minority transfers, why do we have magnet schools in Northwest Huntsville as opposed to other parts of town? To try to draw people of the minority race on this end, and us being in the majority, they would try to pull us to the other end of town so that we could be in the minority. What's going on with that? So that all comes from that lawsuit with the Hereford family, mainly with Sonny Hereford, that we would have to research. So we have to understand how current practices are shaped by things that happened in the past. So that is when you would use historical research, and I would love for somebody to research the impact of those lawsuits in the 60s on education today. Uh, I'm somewhat controversial in that I think that integration had its good and its bad points. I think that in some cases people were better off, and in some cases people were not. So I'm kind of controversial on that. I won't go into that in this discussion. The other thing is it involves locating primary and secondary sources. And so it would be best, like if Mr. Herford, the young man that the lawsuit was brought for, he's still alive. It would be good to get a firsthand perspective from him as to what was going on when he was the only black person that walked into that school that day. Let me go back a little bit about methodology. You begin with identifying a meaningful problem or question. You locate primary and secondary sources, and then you want to evaluate it for authenticity and credibility, which is easier to do with historical research. And synthesize findings to conduct a narrative or an interpretation. Coding. You use open coding for categorizing key concepts across your historical data. You can use pattern coding, chronological coding, all of that. Okay. Historical research, one the advantages are it offers deep contextual insights. So it can illuminate again, as I spoke, how past events will shape present conditions. So that one family and others that brought that lawsuit against Huntsville City Schools is shaping how Huntsville City Schools operate today. And there is a school named for Dr. Herford, who brought the lawsuit on behalf of his son. And Dr. Herford had, in talking to his children, there was some long-term impacts on their family financially for bringing that lawsuit. But it helps us to avoid repeating past mistakes, and it helps us to understand how institutions evolve. Disadvantages is you're limited by the availability and condition of sources, and you are prone to researcher bias in interpreting historical data. Me, as an African American female, I would probably have some emotional or guttural reactions to some of the things that I would read concerning desegregation and integration. Being a part of it and going through it, I would have a different view as someone who is more far removed from it. It can be hard to generalize, and there are challenges with verifying the accuracy and authenticity of the information that you receive. Who could you study? Educators from the civil rights movement era, students affected by desegregation policies. You could look at developing national education standards. We could look at women leaders in STEM education and their history. Those are some things that we could look at with the historical study. I could examine math curriculum changes, a study on the evolution of equity in Alabama's public school funding, post-Brown versus Board of Education, women in engineering, the historical progression, culturally responsive teaching in classrooms, Southern classrooms in particular, over time. So those are some things that we could look at. And of course, we use our textbook as a reference. Thank you for listening.